Chapter 1. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the most narcissistic of them all? Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the dark and twisted world of narcissism. And let me tell you, it's going to be juicy. We're talking about those people who stare at their own reflection a little too long, who love the sound of their own voice more than anything, and who wouldn't hesitate to throw you under the bus if it meant getting ahead. Get ready for a wild ride as we uncover the top 13 famous narcissists from the past and present. We're going to spill the tea, call out the BS, and try not to get sued for defamation, which is always a plus. So, grab your snacks, lock your doors, and get comfy, because this is going to be a long one. I'm not going to lie, some of these people are straight up scary. But you know, in a fascinating kind of way, it's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. You don't want to look, but you just can't help yourself. Anyway, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the thick of it with our first narcissistic superstar. Chapter 2. Donald J. Trump, the OG narcissist. First up, we have the one, the only Donald J. Trump. Oh boy, where do we even begin with this guy? This man practically invented the word narcissism. I mean, have you ever seen someone tweet so much about themselves? It's like his thumbs are glued to his phone, just firing off self-congratulatory messages 24/7. And don't even get me started on the hair. Seriously, what is going on up there? It's like a squirrel died on his head and he decided to call it a hairstyle. I'm pretty sure he has a team of 5 stylists working around the clock to maintain that masterpiece. But okay. All jokes aside, Trump's presidency was something else, right? Love him or hate him, you got to admit he kept things interesting. From his Twitter wars with celebrities to his crazy press conferences, there was never a dull moment. I feel like his whole presidency was just one big reality show. And he was definitely the star of the show, even if his acting skills were, questionable at best. But hey, the man knows how to work a crowd, I'll give him that. Now let's talk about some of the, shall we say, controversial things Trump did during his time in office. First up, the wall. Remember that whole build a wall thing? He was obsessed with it, like it was going to solve all of America's problems. Spoiler alert, it didn't. And then there were the tweets. Oh, the tweets. Trump's Twitter fingers were legendary. He'd tweet about anything and everything, often in the middle of the night, and usually without any filter whatsoever. I mean, I'm all for free speech and all, but sometimes I just wanted to reach through the phone and be like, dude, put it down, go to sleep. But that's just me. I'm a grandma at heart. And don't even get me started on the tantrums. This man throws more tantrums than a toddler who dropped their ice cream cone. Seriously, dude, you're the president of the United States. Get it together. Chapter 3. Kanye West, from college dropout to college dropout. All right, moving on to another king of controversy, Kanye West. Now, Kanye is a complicated dude. On one hand, he's a musical genius. I mean, the man has more bangers than a 4th of July barbecue. His music is iconic, groundbreaking, and he's definitely one of the greatest artists of our generation. On the other hand, he's also, Kanye. He's known for his outlandish statements, his over-the-top persona, and his, let's just say, unique way of seeing the world. Remember that time he interrupted Taylor Swift at the VMAs? Iconic. Or that time he ran for president. I mean, I admire his ambition, I really do. But sometimes I just want to shake him and be like, Kanye, babe, what are you doing? But hey, that's what makes him Kanye, right? He's unpredictable, he's entertaining, and he always keeps us on our toes. And let's be real, he gives us so much material. I mean, the man is a walking, talking meme factory. From his fashion choices to his rants, Kanye always knows how to get people talking. Now, Kanye's narcissism, it's not always a bad thing. I mean, the man is confident, he knows what he wants, and he's not afraid to go after it. And you've got to admit, he's achieved a lot. He's a successful rapper, producer, fashion designer, and entrepreneur. He's like the human embodiment of the phrase, go big or go home. But sometimes it can go a little too far, you know? Remember that time he called himself a god? Or when he said he was the greatest artist of all time? I mean, I get it, you're feeling yourself, Kanye. But maybe tone it down a notch. Just a thought. But then again, if he toned it down, he wouldn't be Kanye, would he? And let's be real, we'd all be pretty bored without Kanye's antics to keep us entertained. Chapter 4, Kim K, Queen of the Selfie. Okay, but Kim Kardashian, is she actually a narcissist? I mean, the girl knows how to work a camera, that's for sure. And she's built an empire on, selfies and contouring. But is that narcissism, or is it just, really good business? Seriously, think about it. The woman is everywhere. She's got her makeup line, her shapewear, her mobile game. She even had that weird vampire facial thing. Remember that? I mean, I'm not saying it's not a little extra, because it totally is, but she's turned herself into a brand, and a really successful one at that. Love her or hate her, you got to respect the hustle. Plus, she seems to be a good mom, and she's been really vocal about prison reform, which is actually pretty awesome. So maybe she's not a full-blown narcissist, just, really, really good at self-promotion. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Because honestly, I go back and forth, I've seen her cry on camera, and she seems genuine. But then, also, she's always talking about herself. And she does love a good mirror selfie. Okay, I'm spiraling. Moving on. Okay, so we can't talk about Kim K without talking about Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I mean, that show is basically a masterclass in narcissism, right? They film everything, and I mean everything, from family vacations to, literally giving birth. But here's the thing, it works. People are obsessed with them. We watch their every move, analyze their relationships, buy their products. They figured out the formula, and it's made them millions. And you've got to admit, they're entertaining. The drama, the fights, the over-the-top lifestyle. It's like a real-life soap opera. But is it all just a carefully constructed facade? Are they really like that in real life, or are they just playing characters for the cameras? I mean, I'd love to know what goes on behind the scenes. Do they ever get tired of being on all the time? Do they ever just want to chill in their sweatpants and eat pizza without being filmed? These are the questions that keep me up at night, you guys. Chapter 5. Madonna, the Material Girl's Guide to World Domination. Okay, Madonna, let's talk about the Queen, the OG Queen of Pop. She's been pushing boundaries and challenging norms since, forever. And she's always done it on her own terms. She's the definition of a self-made woman. From her early days in the 80s with the whole, lace, gloves and crucifixes thing, to her, super sexualized erotica phase, she's never been afraid to shock people. And let's be real, she's a master of reinvention. Every album, every tour, she comes back with a new look, a new sound. And it always gets people talking. I mean, she's been called everything from a genius to a slut-shamer. But one thing's for sure, she doesn't care. She does what she wants, and she doesn't apologize for it. And you know what? I kind of love that about her. She's fearless. She's unapologetically herself, even when herself is constantly evolving. And that's kind of inspiring in a weird way. Okay, let's be real, Madonna's not exactly known for being, humble. She's famous for her diva demands, her, super intense work ethic, and her, let's say, direct communication style. But that's part of what makes her Madonna, right? She's a businesswoman, she's a brand, and she's always in control. I mean, the woman has been at the top of her game for, 4 decades. That doesn't happen by accident. You have to be a little bit narcissistic, a little bit ruthless to survive in that industry for that long. But here's the thing, she's also incredibly talented. She's a gifted songwriter, a captivating performer, and she knows how to put on a show. So, yeah, maybe she's a little bit narcissistic, but she's earned the right to be. Chapter 6. Elon Musk, meme lord or real-life Tony Stark? Okay, Elon Musk. This guy is the ultimate example of a love him or hate him kind of person. I mean, he's a billionaire genius who's trying to colonize Mars. That's some next-level stuff. But he's also, kind of a mess. He tweets weird things, he dates celebrities, he names his kid XAEA Shu. What is happening? But you've got to admit, the guy is ambitious. He's got Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink. He's like a real-life Tony Stark, except, maybe not as smooth with the ladies. And he's constantly pushing the boundaries of technology, trying to, solve climate change and create a multiplanetary civilization, which, that's pretty cool. But then there's the other side of Elon. The side that's kind of arrogant, kind of out of touch. when he called that cave diver a pedo guy, or when he said he was going to buy Twitter and then, like, totally didn't. It's like, dude, read the room. So is Elon Musk a narcissist? I mean, he definitely exhibits some classic narcissistic traits. He's got a huge ego, he's obsessed with success, he's always in the spotlight. But he's also incredibly intelligent, driven, and like weirdly charismatic. It's almost like he's two different people. There's Elon, the visionary, the guy who wants to change the world. And then there's Elon, the troll, the guy who can't resist tweeting something provocative, just to get a reaction. And honestly, I don't know which one is more exhausting. But here's the thing, I think deep down, Elon just wants to be liked. He wants to be seen as the hero, the guy who saved humanity. And maybe that's part of what drives him. This need for validation, this desire to be seen as the smartest, most innovative guy in the room. Or maybe I'm just projecting, I don't know. This guy is complicated. Okay, so Steve Jobs. You guys, like, everyone knows who Steve Jobs is, right? The turtleneck, the jeans, the one more thing at those Apple events, dude was iconic. But like, was he a narcissist? I mean, the guy was obsessed with his own vision, right? Like, he wouldn't rest until everything was perfect, even if it meant being like kind of a jerk to people. And don't even get me started on the whole Apple aesthetic. Everything's so sleek, so minimalist, so controlled. It's like he wanted to control the entire world, one perfectly designed iPhone at a time. Like, I love my iPhone and everything, but it's kind of creepy when you think about it, you know? And the way people worshipped him like he was some kind of tech god. I mean, he was a genius and everything, but come on, it's like everyone just drank the Apple Kool-Aid and never looked back. I bet he loved that, though. The attention, the adoration, the whole shebang. So, yeah, maybe he wasn't a full-blown narcissist, but he definitely had some tendencies, right? It's like you can't be that driven, that successful, without having a little bit of an ego, you know? And then there's this whole thing called the reality distortion field. No, seriously, that's what they called it. Basically, it was like this aura Steve Jobs had where he could convince you of anything. Like, you could tell him his idea was crazy, and he'd somehow make you believe it was the best idea ever. People who worked with him said it was like being hypnotized. He could be so charismatic, so persuasive, that you just got swept up in his vision, even if it meant working insane hours and dealing with his, like, legendary temper tantrums. I mean, the guy was notorious for being difficult. He'd yell at employees, fire people on a whim, just generally be a huge pain in the arse, but, like, he got away with it because he was Steve Jobs, the tech visionary, the guy who was going to change the world. And you know what? He did kind of change the world. I mean, look at us. We're all walking around with iPhones in our pockets, glued to our screens, living in the world Steve Jobs built. So maybe he was onto something with that whole reality distortion thing, you know? Or maybe we're all just suckers for a good product. Okay, moving on from turtlenecks and iPhones to, like, actual emperors and stuff. Napoleon Bonaparte. This guy was like the OG short king with a Napoleon complex, am I right? I mean, the dude was tiny, but he conquered most of Europe. Talk about overcompensating. He crowned himself Emperor of France. Emperor, who does that? It's like, oh, there's no crown big enough for my ego, so I'll just make myself emperor. And then he started handing out titles like they were candy, kings, queens, dukes, you name it. It's like he was building his own little empire of yes men. And don't even get me started on the portraits. Oh my God, the portraits. Always posing like he's some kind of Greek god with that smouldering look in his eye. It's like he was trying to make up for his lack of height with sheer unadulterated grandeur. And the thing is, it kind of worked. People were drawn to his charisma, his ambition, his whole I'm going to take over the world vibe. It's like he was a magnet for power and he wasn't afraid to use it. But Napoleon wasn't just about brute force, you guys. He was also a master manipulator. Like, he knew how to use propaganda to his advantage. He controlled the newspapers, spread rumors, basically controlled the narrative. It's like fake news isn't a new thing, you know? He wanted everyone to see him as this, like, invincible genius, this force of nature that couldn't be stopped. And for a while it worked. He was winning battles, expanding his empire, becoming the most powerful man in Europe. But even Napoleon's ego couldn't withstand the test of time. He made some bad calls like, hello, invading Russia in the winter. Not his smartest move. And eventually, his luck ran out. He was defeated, exiled, and the rest, as they say, is history. But even though he ultimately failed, you've got to give the guy props for sheer audacity. He came from nothing, conquered most of Europe, and became a legend. Love him or hate him, you can't deny that Napoleon Bonaparte was one ambitious narcissist. Okay, guys, this is a tough one. We're talking about Adolf Hitler now, and obviously this is a very sensitive and disturbing subject, but we can't talk about famous narcissists without mentioning him. I mean, the guy's ego and thirst for power led to one of the darkest chapters in human history. It's scary how easily he manipulated people with his words. He was a charismatic speaker, and he knew exactly how to tap into people's fears and prejudices. He blamed everyone else for Germany's problems, the Jews, the communists, the intellectuals, and offered himself as the only solution. He created a cult of personality around himself. People worshipped him like a god. They truly believed he was their savior, the one who would restore Germany to its former glory. It's chilling to think about how one man's twisted ambition could have such a devastating impact on the world. And the thing is, he wasn't born a monster. He was just a man, a deeply flawed and disturbed man, but a man nonetheless. And that's what makes his story so terrifying. It shows us how easily power can corrupt, how even the most ordinary-seeming person can be capable of unspeakable evil. Hitler's rise to power is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ego and blind ambition. He was so obsessed with his own vision, his own twisted ideology, that he was willing to sacrifice millions of lives to achieve it. He surrounded himself with yes-men who were too afraid to challenge him, and he ruthlessly silenced anyone who dared to oppose him. He created a system where dissent was impossible, where his word was law. His need for control was insatiable. He wanted to control everything and everyone, the media, the military, the education system, even people's thoughts. He created a totalitarian state where individuality was crushed and conformity was paramount. The horrors of the Holocaust are a stark reminder of what can happen when narcissism and unchecked power run rampant. It's a lesson we must never forget, a lesson that should haunt us all. We must always be vigilant against the seductive allure of hatred and intolerance, and we must never allow ourselves to be blinded by charisma or empty promises. Chapter 10, Julius Caesar, he came, he saw, he conquered. Himself, Section 1, Veni, Vidi, Ego. Okay, so we're diving deep into ancient Rome now, guys. Julius Caesar. This dude was like the OG. I came, I saw, I conquered kind of guy, you know? But did he conquer his own ego? That's the real question. I mean, the dude literally wrote a whole book about his own military campaigns. Who does that? It's giving self-obsessed, right? And don't even get me started on the whole Roman Republic thing. Homeboy basically dismantled a whole system of government like it was nothing, just so he could be the main man in charge. Talk about ambitious. I mean, I get it. Ambition is cute and all, but this is next level. And the way he just casually strolled into Egypt and got chummy with Cleopatra, come on, dude. I'm starting to think this guy was all about the drama and the attention. Just saying. Section 2. Et tu, narcissism. Speaking of drama, can we talk about the whole assassination thing, getting stabbed in the back by your own boys? That's rough, man. But also, maybe don't be such a self-proclaimed dictator and people will like you more. Just a thought. And the way he styled himself? The laurel wreath, the toga perfectly draped over his shoulder like some kind of Roman god. Honey, he knew what he was doing. He was serving looks and ruling empires all at the same time. Honestly, you've got to hand it to him. Caesar knew how to play the game. He understood the power of image, of propaganda, of making people believe in his greatness. Was he a narcissist? Maybe. But he was also a brilliant strategist and a master manipulator. So, yeah. Julius Caesar definitely earns a spot on our list. He was a complex figure, full of contradictions, but one thing's for sure, he was feeling himself and he wasn't afraid to let the world know it. Chapter 11. Cleopatra, the original Queen Bee. Section 1, More Than Just a Pretty Face. Cleopatra. This woman, let me tell you, was the definition of an icon. She wasn't just a pretty face, though she definitely had that going on too. This queen was smart, resourceful, and she knew how to work a room, or in her case, a kingdom. She seduced not one, but two of the most powerful men of her time, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. And let's be real, these guys weren't exactly falling for just anyone. Cleopatra had an aura, a presence that just screamed, I'm in charge. She wasn't afraid to use her intelligence and her feminine wiles to get what she wanted, whether it was political power, alliances, or just a little fun. I mean, the woman sailed down the Nile River in a golden barge, dressed as the goddess Isis. If that's not extra, I don't know what is. But hey, you got to admire her hustle. She was playing a man's game and she was winning. She knew her worth, and she wasn't afraid to flaunt it. Section 2, All Hail the Queen. And let's talk about her style for a minute. Cleopatra was the queen of eyeliner and dramatic entrances. She understood the power of image, of presenting herself as a goddess, a queen, a force to be reckoned with. She wasn't just ruling Egypt, she was branding it. She put herself on coins, statues, temples. She wanted everyone to know who was boss, and honey, it worked. Now, some might call her ruthless, manipulative, maybe even a little bit narcissistic. And yeah, she probably was all of those things, but she was also a survivor, a brilliant strategist, and a true original. Cleopatra wasn't afraid to embrace her power, her sexuality, her ambition. She knew what she wanted, and she went after it full force. She was the original queen bee, and her story continues to fascinate and inspire us centuries later. Chapter 12. Alexander the Great conquering the world, one mirror selfie at a time. Section 1. From Macedonia to megafame. Next up, we've got Alexander the Great. This guy was like the ultimate overachiever. I mean, conquering the known world by the age of 30, that's some serious ambition right there. He was like the popular kid in school who peaked early, but instead of peaking, he just kept conquering. Seriously, the dude never stopped. From Greece to India, he was like, this land is my land and that land over there, yeah, that's mine too. And let's talk about his ego for a sec. I mean, the dude was seriously feeling himself. He had his face put on coins, statues, you name it. He even named a bunch of cities after himself, like, come on, Alexander, give someone else a turn. But hey, you got to admire his confidence, right? He believed he was destined for greatness, and he made it happen. He was like the OG influencer, spreading his brand of conquest, and let's be real, narcissism across the ancient world. Section 2, too much of a good thing. Now, some people might say he was a brilliant military strategist, a visionary leader. Others might say he was a ruthless tyrant, a power-hungry narcissist. And honestly, they're probably both right. I mean, the dude literally thought he was a god, a literal descendant of Zeus, and he wasn't afraid to let everyone know it. Talk about a god complex, am I right? But you can't deny his impact on history. He spread Greek culture throughout the world. He built cities. He created empires. He was a force of nature, for better or worse. So, was Alexander the Great a narcissist? Probably. But he was also a fascinating, complex figure who left an undeniable mark on the world. He was a reminder that sometimes a little bit of ego can go a long way, or in his case, a really, really long way. Chapter 13. Joseph Stalin, the Iron Fist in a Velvet Glove. Okay, so we're diving deep into the USSR with this one, guys. Joseph Stalin. This dude was like the ultimate stage mom, but instead of forcing his kid to do beauty pageants, he forced an entire country to follow his, let's call it, unique vision. I mean, picture this. You're born in this tiny village in Georgia, right? Your dad's a cobbler, your mum's cleaning houses, and you're destined for a life of, like, farming potatoes or something. But Stalin, he was like, nah, fam, I'm going to rule the freaking Soviet Union, talk about shooting for the stars. And the craziest part, he actually did it. This dude went from, like, seminary school, where he was training to be a priest, to leading a full-blown revolution. I'm talking overthrowing the Tsar, outmaneuvering his rivals, the whole shebang. Honestly, the more you learn about Stalin's life, the more it feels like a movie script, and not one of those feel-good comedies either, more like a psychological thriller with like a depressing ending where everyone's crying and eating borscht. So, Stalin gets into power, right? And he's not really about that whole sharing is caring thing. He was more like, it's my way or the highway to Siberia, which, let's be real, is not exactly a fun road trip. He creates this whole cult of personality around himself. I'm talking giant portraits everywhere, statues, poems, songs, you name it. It was like if Kim Jong-un and every boy band that ever existed had a baby, and that baby was propaganda. And the people, they were terrified of him, like legitimately terrified. He had this secret police force that would just disappear people in the middle of the night. You could be gossiping about Stalin's hat with your neighbor, and boom, next thing you know, you're in a gulag somewhere. It's dark, you guys, really dark. But it's also a lesson in how power can corrupt even the most potato farmingest of us. Stay woke, people. Chapter 14, Benito Mussolini, the OG dictator. All right, next up on our narcissist parade, Benito Mussolini. This dude basically invented the whole fascist dictator starter pack, and let me tell you, it was not a cute look. I'm talking like military uniforms, dramatic speeches, and a whole lot of finger-pointing. He was like the angsty teenage boy of world leaders, always picking fights and blaming everyone else for his problems. The crazy thing is, Mussolini actually started out as a socialist. Can you imagine? Like going from let's share the wealth to I am the wealth is quite the glow down, even for a dictator. But that's what happens when you let power go to your head, I guess. You start believing your own hype, and the next thing you know, you're invading Ethiopia and hanging out with Hitler. Not a good look, Benito, not a good look at all. Okay, so Mussolini loved himself some propaganda. I'm talking posters, radio broadcasts, newsreels, you name it, he plastered his face on it. It was like if Instagram influencers existed in the 1930s, but instead of trying to sell you teeth-whitening kits, they were trying to sell you fascism. And the thing is, people bought it. They were like, yeah, Benito, you tell those other countries who's boss. We're number one. It's kind of scary how easily people can be swayed by a strong man with a good marketing team. But behind all the bravado, Mussolini was actually super paranoid. He was constantly worried about people trying to overthrow him, which, let's be real, is probably what happens when you spend your days being a dictator. He had secret police everywhere, just like Stalin. It was like a game of cat and mouse, except the cat was a paranoid dictator, and the mice were anyone who dared to disagree with him. Not exactly the most fun game night, if you ask me. Chapter 15, Outro. Well, there you have it, guys. Our whirlwind tour of history's most notorious narcissists. From emperors to dictators, inventors to pop stars, we've covered it all. It's been a wild ride, full of drama, ambition, and a whole lot of ego. But hey, that's what makes these figures so fascinating, right? They're a reminder that human nature is complex and often contradictory. Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating personalities. See you in the next video.